Welcome to a new week. It's almost spring in many parts of the world, but it doesn't feel like that over here with the amount of snow that fell over the last weekend. And it seems like it's going to, I mean, not the same amount of snow, but there is going to be snowfall at least until April, I read somewhere. But it's going to be a busy day. Let's just get started with our highlights. The first one from Sophie's World. Plato's point is that we can never have true knowledge of anything that is in a constant state of change. We can only have opinions about things that belong to the world of the senses, tangible things. We can only have true knowledge of things that can be understood with our reason. So I suppose the things that are in constant state of change are things that we cannot tangibly perceive. But other than that, I don't really remember the context either, nor the history. So I don't think really I can tell a lot about it, talk a lot about this. But if you're into philosophy, this is quite straightforward. So moving on, originals. Managers tend to be too risk averse. They focus on the costs of investing in bad ideas rather than the benefits of piloting good ones, which leads them to commit a large number of false negatives. So the idea is that being risk averse is going to lead you to focus on the losses rather than benefits you would get. And this tends to be very prominent in middle management, especially. And again, it's not blaming them, it's how the systems are commonly built. Middle managers, they have to become risk averse because of the organizational dynamics. At the edges of the organization, they don't really have a lot of pressure. I mean, they just have to answer to the middle management, really. And at the core, at the executive level, again, they can focus outwards. They don't really have anyone to answer to except the market. And for that, you need innovation. So it's the middle management that's unfortunately in a place where they have to be risk averse. And it's like this. If they're not risk averse, they have to answer to both ends of the organization. They have to answer to executives why things are not running on time, and they even have to answer to the individual contributors. When the outcomes don't line up, and when it affects the individual contributors as well. So unfortunately, middle managers tend to be placed in this zone of being too risk averse, and thereby they focus on the cost of investing in the bad ones rather than benefits of good ones. Benefits, it's not like they don't understand the benefits, but it's a hard choice, and it's kind of like a default choice, playing towards being safe. So let's move on anyway. Measure what matters. If your KRs are expressed in team internal terms, launch FOO 4.1, they probably aren't good. What matters isn't the launch, but its impact. Why is FOO 4.1 important? Better. Launch FOO 4.1 to improve signups by 25%, or simply improve signups by 25%. So KRs are key results. They're part of this OKRs, objectives and key results. So the this is a guideline and how we are going to write a good OKR. So yeah, objective is one thing. This highlight focuses on the key results part of it. So if your key result is launch something, it's like, for example, launch FOO 4.1 as the example here goes. It's probably something that's team internal. Only the team recognizes it. Nobody outside the team will really understand what does it matter if FOO 4.1 is launching. What does it matter to everybody else? And that's one of the important things about an OKR, that it gives visibility to teams outside your team, right? And if you're going to put this in team internal terms, it's not going to really create a lot of impact organization wide. Okay, maybe your team is going to identify with it, but not the organization. So you have to phrase your key results that organization can identify with, right? So that's the example. Why is the 4.1 better, or why is it important? Okay, because it's going to increase signups by 25%. So that is your key result, not launching FOO 4.1. Moving on, the leader's greatest return. When you're trying to identify potential leaders to develop, look for influence. It's a qualification that must be present in someone you wish to develop as a leader. Because leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. If people can't influence others, they can't lead. I don't know if I agree with this, like nothing more, nothing less part. But yeah, I do agree with leadership, a lot of it being influence. Because if you don't have influence, and not to talk about it in a negative way, but if you don't have influence, you can't influence anybody in your team. That means a host of factors. If you can't influence anybody, it means that you've not built the trust with anybody, or people do not think you're a competent person or a competent leader. So a lot of factors that go into influence. So think of influence as the good thing over there. It's kind of like a summary of good things that you build up. Things like competency, things like trust, integrity, stuff like that. So leadership is influence, and that it's an umbrella term that covers a lot. Like competency, integrity, and so on. So yes, if people can't influence others, they can't lead. By the way, book seems promising. I just started reading this over the weekend. It seems promising so far. Let's see how it goes. And yeah, let's move on. Why has nobody told me this before? The way you feel also influences the types of thoughts that can pop into your head, making you more vulnerable to experiencing thoughts that are negative and self-crucial. Even when you know our thought patterns aren't helping, it is so incredibly hard to think differently when we feel down, and even harder to follow the rule of only positive thoughts that is often suggested on social media. Yeah, I think it pretty much says everything that I would want to. I don't really feel I have anything to add to this. I'll move on. It's a tweet. I'm just going to skip it. Next, we have range. Bingham calls it outside in thinking, finding solutions in experiences far outside of focused training for the problem itself. History is littered with world changing examples. So, I don't really remember the context, but really, like the key phrase over here, finding solutions in experiences far outside of focused training for the problem itself. Uh, that's really the subject of the book. The innovation that's happening at the edges of the problem space. And I know said that I used the same phrase earlier in a different context, but yeah, the same thing over here, happening at the edges of the problem space. So if yeah, if you're like too deep into the problem space and too what's the word, too prosaic or too pedantic about it, you probably will not really explore the edges. Things that are intersecting with other fields, and that yeah, I mean that's great for specialization, but a lot of solutions to a lot of problems are found at the edges. Integrating it with other problem spaces. So yeah, in fact, over here it says finding solutions in experiences far outside in focus training. So yeah, let's move on. Pirates in the Navy. Such practices send an implicit message to employees that innovation is about the artifacts that startup use, not the creation of real value. So I don't really remember this, but I suppose from the highlight it seems that innovation is about in some organizations, and it's very easy to fall prey to this. By the way, it's like I have fallen prey to this as well. So making innovation about creating something and then letting that be in itself, as in like from software engineering world, creating a tool and letting the tool be for itself, speak for itself rather than the outcome it's going to solve. So the outcome is where the real value creation happens, right? But you might just take a look at the tool and say that all that like you should just use the tool for the sake of using the tool, and that's not the real message that you want to send. That's not what innovation is about. Innovation is about solving real problems, creating real value outcomes. It could be new problems, it could be problems that are going to come up, but it has to create real value, not just creating a tool for the sake of using a tool. But yeah, let's move on. Measure what matters. An OKR culture is an accountable culture. You don't push toward a goal just because the boss gave you an order. You do it because every OKR is transparently important to the company and to the colleagues who count on you. Nobody wants to be seen as the one holding back the team. Everybody takes pride in moving progress forward. It's a social contract, but a self-governed one. I think this highlight says, again, this highlight says everything. I don't really feel I need to add anything to this. It's kind of mirrors. We like another highlight from the same book came up a little earlier, right? It's kind of the same thing here as well. OKRs are going to create that visibility across organization, and thereby it creates an accountable culture. So you don't push towards a goal just because you've been told to do something, but because you can see that every OKR in the company is seeing this, so that is why you push towards a goal. So you are in alignment with the whole company. That's the value of OKRs when done right. Right. So yeah, let's move on. Again, why has nobody told me this before? You might notice that you feel the need for more reassurance from others when your mood is low. If you don't get that extra reassurance, you might automatically assume that they are thinking negatively about you. But that is a bias, and it is quite possible that you are your worst critic. Again, I think it's very much in line with the previous highlight from the same book. Why has nobody told me this before? So when we are feeling low, a lot of thoughts that don't help us creep in, or let's just say negative thoughts. And when you're feeling low and when these thoughts are creeping in, it's actually much harder at that time to like the previous highlight mentioned, think about positive things, or force yourself to think positively as social media demands, stuff like that. So again, similarly, if we don't get that extra reassurance at the time when we're feeling low, and that's really that's where family comes into play. Family and loving partners, and those who can see that you're feeling down and then provide you that extra reassurance, because you need it at that time. It's not about facts, or it's not about truth, or it's not about values. It's about the human condition of being at a low point at that particular time, and then just needing that extra reassurance to get back out of it. So, well, I mean, that's a different perspective. The perspective that this highlight provides is that it's a bias. When we don't get that reassurance, we go into that spiral of thinking worse about ourselves. And like the highlight says, we are our own worst critic. So we make up stories. We make up. I mean, based on facts. It's not like we are convincing to ourselves. We take real incidents and we manipulate it in such a way that we portray ourselves in the worst possible light. So yeah, but all of this is a bias. It's a bias because it started because we are feeling low. A lot of different factors why we are feeling low, but again, we are feeling low, and that's when this negative thoughts creep in. Um, but let's end this. It's a bonus highlight which I'm going to skip like always, and that brings us to the end of our highlights today. Again, I think it's like roughly we're ending on the average time. That said, I think, yeah, like that's really, I don't really have any other comments today. So have a good day, everyone. Bye.